Okay, and we're live. Welcome everyone to the stream. We got an exciting tournament finals match between AlephYa2 and Lalo8888. So this should be a fun one. If you're not familiar with Cyber Format is the format held in September 2005, which uses the GOAT format ban list and a card pool going up to Cybernetic Revolution. So you have a lot of explosivity in the format. You know, if you're familiar with Reaper format, which I've started to cover, very recently on the channel, then you know that that format does have decks like Steins that can just go into a ton of damage out of nowhere. And in Cyber format, you have those decks running around at arguably a higher power level because they have things like Graceful Charity, Pot of Greed, etc. to draw into their combos, and they've also got triple limit removal as well, so you can play that as well. And one of the players in this finals event here is actually on that. And the other player is also on a Stein sort of deck. Although I will be trying to ask these players after the match wraps up, like whether they would actually classify their decks as a Stein deck or a deck that just plays Stein as something to potentially go into and go for a bunch of damage if you want to. But it should be a pretty fun matchup overall, and it looks like AlephYa2 is hosting here for Lalo. So once that gets going, we'll dive into that and see how it goes. But I'm excited. Yeah, exactly, Steven Yurosevic. Let's go. Okay, I'm hyped for this. It should be a really fun one. I think the Cyber format games are really fun to watch just because they're very, very explosive, and you never know what's going to happen next. So I'm excited to dive into it and see what goes on. Thank you so much, Steven. Yeah, I try to be as good as I can. And I appreciate the support. So thank you so much. But yeah, so I mean, I definitely am the only YouTuber streaming Cyber format games. So if that's what you're here for, I'm the best that you can have for that. So yeah, I'm really excited for this. LOL, I think, is booting up their PC, so they should be starting and getting on very, very soon. So yeah, I'm excited. It should be a fun one. If you want more Cyber format gameplay as well after this, I do have other Cyber format games on my channel. We've got a whole playlist for that. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff to watch there if this sort of piques your interest. And definitely join the YGOFrom0 Discord server if you want to play in the next tournament that we're holding in Reaper format or in just any other games that I've covered in the channel. The matchup here is, let's dive into it, and I'll explain the matchup as we dive into it. So the matchup is Lalo on a bit more of an all-in Stein deck, and AlephYa2 is on a bit more of like a Stein Monarch deck a bit. Where's the game? But yeah, they're on a bit more of like a Monarch deck, a bit more of Chaos there as well. So it's a bit less all in on Stein, although it definitely does go into Stein as well. Is the game okay? I think maybe I'll just unhosted there for a second. Okay, yeah, there's Lalo. So it looks like there's some issues with the hosting. Thank you so much for the super chat, Saboma. Good tournament. Glad I made the top 8. Goat Boy 78 with Stein OTK. Yeah, you did making to top 8 in this tournament was a big achievement, I think, because a lot of great players were playing. And it was definitely very, very intense competition. But yeah, Stein OTK, such a powerful deck in this format. So I'm glad that you were repping it. I'm glad that Lalo8888 is repping it as well. And also, AlephYa2 is still playing Stein in their deck, even if they're not on the full sort of Stein OTK shenanigans, right? They're not playing like Triple Limiter. They're not playing all that. But we have seen them go into Stein multiple times over the course of the tournament. So we might happen to see that happen today as well. But AlephYa2 is going to go first, which is a big advantage in this sort of matchup. There is 3 dust shoot legal in this format, so you can potentially dust shoot your opponent turn 1. And against Stein OTK, that's really, really good because you need to disrupt their combo plays there. But yeah, it's always cool to see what people use for usernames on Discord and YouTube. So it's cool, seeing who's who. But yeah, Cold Wave to start out from AlephYa2 and just a pass, not committing any monsters to the board, so that way Lalo can't bring out like a Cyber Dragon, get aggressive that way. It is a bit risky if Lalo brings out Spirit Reaper and attacks in directly, but that's opening themselves up to a ton of damage here. Look like they're just going to go for a Fusilier Dragon, the dual mode beast. So this comes out with 1400 attack, not 2800, but this might imply that in their hand they do have a way to revive this thing, so they might have Premature Burial or Call the Haunted for later to bring this thing back from the graveyard to buff it up to 2800. They could just be getting in for 14, dealing that chip damage, trying to get AlephYa2 out of Stein range. But it is risky because now AlephYa2 can bring out this Cyber Dragon. Oh, and there's the last will. So yeah, this might just be the end of the game. Yeah, Exiled Force going for the Fusilier there, but this should be lethal if Lalo does not have Karibo, because you bring out Cyber Stein, go into Cyber Twin Dragon, and that's 5,600 plus 700, so 6,300 plus 2,100, so that's 8,400 damage total. So yeah, rough stuff. And there is actually an argument for Lalo not even committing the Fusilier and just attacking, like, or not even attacking at all, because, you know, if you open up a monster there, then you enable your opponent to bring out the Cyber Dragon. And you don't want them to bring out Cyber Dragon because that opens up a ton of last will plays potentially. And we saw that there with the Exiled Force. If you didn't have a monster on field, Exiled Force wouldn't have been a thing either. And if AlephYa2 does go for the Cold Wave there, turn 1, they might have a really good setup in turn 2 to actually kill you. So that is, like, I'm very curious to see the hand after this, because I do think that maybe it was the correct move for Lalo just to do nothing, which seems wild in a format as aggressive as this one. But sometimes, you know, you just got to be like, well, I can't allow my opponent to get too aggressive here, you know, and I can't just take the chip damage. I got to play it safe. I got to not do anything here, despite how weird that seems. But we're going into game 2, and I'm very curious to see what will happen here, because, yeah, very quick games of them. I mean, this might be a very quick stream, honestly, depending on how the games go. But we'll get AlephYa2 and Lalo in here afterwards to sort of discuss the games and what's going on there. So that should, you know, pad things out a little bit. And also, it should be pretty insightful, too, because both these players are very, very good at this format. And, I mean, they managed to make it to the top 2 here. So I'm excited to see what their thoughts are on the tournament and the format as a whole. But siding is very interesting in this, because I could see, for instance, like a player siding out of the Stein OTK stuff. Like, probably not Lalo, because Lalo's deck is sort of all in on that, playing limit removals, things like that. But AlephYa2 could potentially side out of that, because they were able to win with it game 1, and it's much better going first than it is going second. I mean, you could still set it up going second, but your opponent's able to get out the back row there, potentially threatening roars, things like that. So it can be a little bit more awkward. Lalo's going to open with a T-set and pass back to AlephYa2, so a bit less of a powerful opening than AlephYa2 had there. But yeah, this would be in contention for the quickest finals ever if it does wrap up. Like, if this is just a 2-0 and it's just like side OTK every game, and that would be pretty wild. But I do think that even with the side OTK, there are some interesting things to mention there. Like, as you saw, you know, turn 1, AlephYa2 just played Cold Wave. That's a very, very interesting move, and Lalo could have responded to that in a variety of different ways. So there was sort of flexibility there. And Janjo, yeah, you came in game 2, actually, not game 1, because game 1 wrapped up like that, just in a snap. So very, very cool stuff. But yeah, we're going to have the interviews there. It was a bit too short notice to get a co-commentator on the line, but oh, wow, this is a brutal turn from Lalo here, and it does get AlephYa2 out of the Stein range. 3k is exactly enough to get AlephYa2 out of that Stein range, unless they decided into Karibos, but it doesn't look like they did, or if they did, they're not using it here. So yeah, now AlephYa2 is cut off from that Stein axis, which is such an important thing in this format and in this matchup. Yeah, Lalo's doing pretty well this game. I could definitely see them winning this game too, and then bringing it to game 3. So very, very cool stuff from both players. And I think both players are playing this very well. But yeah, now AlephYa2, they got to decide how to play this one. Yeah, I mean, there's not really enough gameplay here to carry the co-commentary. I agree with that, DK. I mean, again, there are some interesting things here, like game 1. Lalo's choice to bring a Fusilier was a bit interesting, and you know, there was arguments for that and against it. You know, maybe the Cold Wave was just a desperation of bluff that they had a Stein OTK, and you want to be getting in that damage to potentially try and drop them below that threshold. But yeah, looks like they're going to bring out Tribe here, pop the Breaker, and then probably attack over the Dekoichi. I feel like that's probably what they're doing here, because if Lalo had a book, I mean, potentially you save the book, because they might just go for the Tribe tagging into Dekoichi play. But they could also have Limiter there, and Limiter would, you know, be used in the battle phase to potentially get the Dekoichi over the Tribe, but also you might just let the Dekoichi go as well. So it looks like they are just going to go for the pop on the Dekoichi here. I think that makes sense. If it is Limiter, you want to keep them off that, and then get in for 16. So I think that does make sense, but it is indeed a book. So getting a little bit punished for that play. But I do think it made sense to go for that, given that Lalo is on a bit more of an all-in Stein OTK strategy. Oh, and also, I guess, because you've got a BLS coming down here. That's one of the other things that makes Cyber format different from Reaper format, is that BLS is around and is legal. And this is going to get Lalo out of that Stein range here. So even though Book, you know, did come down there, I do think it made pretty sense, or a lot of sense there. But yeah, and now, as History YGOFrom0 says, Stein is shut off for both players unless they've got some other ways to get back above that life point threshold. I know there are some decks in this format that do play things like Scapegoat plus Token Thanksgiving, so you can use that combination of cards there to potentially get yourself up above 5k, but that's going to be a little bit awkward here for Lalo because of that tribe-infecting virus. So Snatch on the BLS is going to be really big here. This might just be a push for game if they've got another monster here as well. They've got a Fusilier, and this is going to be 14 plus 3k plus 1400, so that will indeed be lethal. So, you know, very, very intense game, very, very quick game. Again, you know, these games go really, really quick. That's just the nature of the format. And it makes it very, very different from something like GOAT format, and even different from something like Reaper format. I feel like even in the games where Stein does not come down in Cyber, you often do have just very, very quick games compared to GOAT or Reaper. Whereas in Reaper format, if, you know, the Stein OTK does not go through, you potentially do have longer, grindier games because things like Monarchs are a bit more grindier with the Treeborn Frogs and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, we'll have to see if we can do sub 15 minutes DK. Definitely a possibility here. But we'll also have to see how much AlephYa2 and Lalo8888 have to say about the format afterwards, because I do think there is a lot to discuss here, even if the games go quick. And, you know, I always say that, like, different formats appeal to different people. There are definitely going to be people out there watching who see this sort of gameplay and they're like, ew, I don't like that stuff. That's not for me. I'm never touching this format. And that's completely fine. I do think there are also plenty of people out there who sort of see this sort of gameplay, see the high octane games that are going on here, and they're like, that actually looks like my cup of tea. And to those people out there, I encourage you to try out the format. I think it's really fun. And it's kind of a neat bridge between GOAT format and Reaper format. So I encourage you to try it out. I think it was really fun exploring it. And I think a lot of people thought it was better than they might have expected. But Duo coming down here in the opener. Duo is still legal along with the other GOAT Trinity. And it hits a Threatening Roar and a TT there. Okay, pitching the TT is quite interesting, but you probably figure, well, if AlephYa2 can just get set up this turn anyways, you don't really need the TT. Now, as a note for Last Will in this format, you do have to activate Last Will before a monster gets sent from field to grave in this format to actually use its effect. So, you know, TT is a little bit better here because you don't have to worry about, like, well, okay, if I TT this, are they going to activate Last Will afterwards? But yeah, Reaper locals are going to be tomorrow as well. They're probably going to be at 8 p.m. EST. If you want to have a say in that time, then definitely head on over to the YGOFrom0 Discord server and vote in that. But right now, the votes seem pretty overwhelming for, and Dustshoot too. That is brutal. That's rough stuff there. But yeah, right now the votes seem pretty clear that it will be 8 EST. So it looks like that was a Decoichi that got shuffled back. That's probably the only monster in the hand, I assume. Well, I don't know. It seemed like Lalo just put it back before AlephYa2 decided. So that to me says that this was just all Spawn Trap plus a Decoichi. And that's going to be pretty rough for Lalo here potentially. They might have ways to deal with, oh, yeah, that's kind of rough. Heavy Storm, Mirror Force, and Knock. Ooh, that's not the best there. But the move might honestly be, I mean, there could just be the move of, like, setting Force and Knock if you think the set is not a Heavy Storm bluff. You could also just go for Heavy Storm on the back row and then set them Force, but it looks like they're just going to set one. Probably the Mirror Force could be like the Knock just to bait out like a Breaker play, but Breaker is limited, so it's a bit tricky there. Yeah, so AlephYa2 is thinking here. Deciding what to do exactly. It is definitely a very tricky situation. Do you attack into the Force? It looks like they're just going to attack in. And will Lalo take that is the question. It looks like they are indeed going to take it. So no Breaker from AlephYa2. Probably not a Mobius either, or else you probably would just summon out the Mobius, get the value there. Yeah, very tricky position for Lalo to be in here. But AlephYa2 doesn't seem to be able to press the offensive here. So pass him back to Lalo. Let's see what they've got. Just another set pass. Could be a set heavy on AlephYa2's part, and they're just being a bit patient with it. But if they do have the heavy there, now's a good time to activate it, honestly. But they do have to think about this, because this is a very important turn. If this is the turn they can potentially drop Lalo below 5,000. And that is a very, very important life point threshold to reach. Heavy coming down from hand. Oh, whoops. I mean, they're probably going to have to pull up the log for that, but no way that you pitch the Mirror Force there if that was a bluff set, you know. But yeah, and going for the Last Will now, so this probably should wrap up the game. Tributing out over that tribe, and now going for probably a Stein from deck, I assume, unless they don't have Stein, but they still do have the Stein in the deck. So that will indeed be the end of the game. So good games here, and I think that is a record on the stream length. That's less than 15 minutes. That was indeed sub 15. So yeah, very, very good stuff here. And, as we saw there, just brutal stuff. Yeah, knocking heavy, unfortunately. Oh, and Stein on the top too. Yeah, so that is rough stuff. So we can check the replay out here. And we'll show both and see what's going on there. But let's get them into the call. Okay. Let's see if we can get them in to the call here, because that was some very interesting games there. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening to both of you. And congratulations to both AlephYa2 for winning this match, but also to Lalo for making it this far. I mean, those were some pretty intense games. So what were your thoughts on those games itself and the decks that you were playing? Let's start with Aleph because you won the match here. So what were your thoughts on the deck and how it performed in this game and the other games of the tournament?
Yeah, first, thanks for the congrats. Yeah, I honestly think the format is pretty silly, to be honest. I do like the cybernetic cards a lot, pretty nostalgic, but yeah, it's basically all Cyberstein, the whole gameplay somehow. And also, to be honest, I don't think that my deck was that great. I did pretty spontaneously decide to join the tournament just because I wanted to play a bit with Cyber Dragons. So I took one of the Cold Wave Monarch Stein lists from the stock and changed a few cards. So I don't think it was that great. Not that perfect.
Do you have any ideas for what you might change in the future? Things that didn't work out, things that did?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the whole Cold Wave Zarbox stuff, if it works, it feels great, but it's a pretty vulnerable combo somehow. I think I would try to build it a bit more solid, even a bit less combo oriented, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, in the finals, I had the game one, the Cold Wave was of course game winning because I had the perfect follow up. But I think in the whole tournament, the Cold Waves more often felt like a liability.
Yeah, and there also was the potential for Lalo just not to commit into the Cold Wave at all, and then not open up the Cyber Dragon or the Exiled Force there for game one.
I was a bit worried about that. I just thought for a second, oh shit, if he's just gonna pass back. But I think if I would have been in his shoes, I would have also probably summoned a monster, especially if I would have had multiples. Because I mean, it wasn't super likely for me to have the OTK combo in the leftover 4 cards. So
yeah. So there definitely
Yeah,
were.
exactly.
Yeah, Lalo, if you want to explain the play, yeah.
Yeah, I just thought about getting some damage. But yeah, I didn't think I had the perfect combination to close me up on the following turn.
Yeah, and
I think it was correct from you to summon a monster. I would have done the same because you can't just wait and do nothing. Not really.
Yeah, and we were discussing that as it happened on stream, and I was like, it definitely is debatable, like whether you want to summon Fusilier or not. But like, it really could have gone either way, right? If Alf did not have the combo in hand at all, then it was definitely correct to summon Fusilier, getting that chip damage, because then you're getting closer to depriving them of Stein. But if they have that perfect combo in hand, then it just works out that way. And that's sometimes the format, but it does lead to some interesting decisions for sure. So Lalo, how about you? What was how would you classify your deck, and what did you like about it? What did you not like about it over the course of the tournament? Anything that you would change?
So I started to play this deck following the list of recent chaos match in deck. And I made some changes about it, like the Reflect Bounder, who I thought was a good beater for the machine strat. And I tried to make the deck more aggressive, and in that case, more high roll, because I needed to get the limiter removal to close up the games fast.
Yeah, triple limiter
so
is kind of wild
yeah.
in this format.
Yeah, it's really a blowout card that no one's expected in match I played, and that stole me most of the games I played.
And
yeah,
so
overall, the deck could have performed better. Probably some cards weren't optimal, but I'm happy with the deck overall.
Awesome. Yeah. And maybe people will test out the Reflect Bounder in the deck in the future, because I know it's something that not many people have played, but when you think about it more, it can be pretty good. Like if your opponent brings out like a Cyber Dragon to hit over it, they're still taking 2100 from that. And
yeah,
I mean, that gets them out of Stein range potentially. So that's, pretty powerful play there. And it is a light, so if you do want to play Chaos Monsters, like it seems like you are playing, it's very good for that too. So yeah, I like that deck. I'm curious to see what people will do with it in the future.
thanks.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just curious too how the format will evolve from here, because I know currently we're in Reaper format on the channel, and in that format people sort of go back and forth about like, oh, is Stein really the best deck, or are things like Bazoo Return better and stuff. But I really do think like the Trinity allowing you to dig deeper into the deck for the Stein OTK pieces, limit removal being at 3 if you do want to play that. I think some version of Stein is always going to be very, very good in this format. And so I'm curious to see whether, the format will evolve into more anti-Stein decks, just decks that come out and they try and get you below 5,000 as fast as possible to shut that off, or if Stein will just continue to dominate and people will just lean more towards Stein. Do either of you have any thoughts?
I'm really looking forward for the warrior strategy.
Oh yeah,
that you brought on your channel. I think that can probably be a contender.
Yeah, I think Warriors was kind of underplayed in this tournament. There definitely were people on it, and some people made it to Top Cut. I think Dean made it to Top Cut with Warriors, but yeah, I don't think that's a room for the format to sort of grow further as people test out ways to sort of play around the Cyberstein stuff. People probably, I think, played more Stein this tournament than people expected, because, it is sort of the new combo, right? If you go from GOAT to this format, you want to play around with the Cyberstein stuff. I mean, as Aleph said, like Cyber Dragon's really cool, and you want to play around with that. And one of the decks that can take advantage of it the most is Cyberstein decks. So, yeah, I'm curious to see as the format goes on if people fall back on the old GOAT format decks more.
Yeah, I think what just a bit off topic, but what I usually did in this format is my main deck is a bit more OT, not a super OTK deck, but I think I only played like one Last Will, if I remember correctly, but two Steins. I think post side I did really cut down on the combo stuff. I think I kept in the one Stein because it can be just broken, but because post side people just try to side against the Stein combo stuff, bring the Barbokus, Dust Shoots, Kuribos or so I usually try to blank those. That was pretty decent for me. I just generally tried to make the deck post side more solid, like more good standalone cards. That's also how I somehow got the W's against the warrior strategies. Those were really, really close games where I was very close to losing in the last rounds.
Yeah, so it seems like there's both ways to go with the Stein deck, because I do think that sort of smokescreen that you're talking about is kind of underexplored in a lot of people's versions of the deck, and so there's more room to grow there. But also with the warrior strategy itself, as we mentioned earlier, definitely room to improve that as well. So
yeah, I also think some aggro warrior, something like that can be pretty good here. I think it has to be changed a bit from GOAT format, just because of Cyber Dragon. Cyber Dragon is just natural out to like Kaiku and Blade Knight and such. So really relying on those mainly is not that great here. I think it needs some different beaters. I'm not sure. DD Assailant is it still at 3 in this format?
I believe it is at 3, yeah.
And that, for example, it feels better than Blade Knight because it's a bit weaker, but it has the built-in insurance versus Cyber Dragon, for example, and maybe even King Tiger Wang Hu main, just to really stop the recruiters in Steins and such. I think something like that with Stolen's Dust Shoots, that could be a really good deck in this format.
Yeah, and I hope people try it out more because I think this format's still pretty young and underexplored. I mean, some would say for good reason because a lot of people don't like dealing with the Stein OTK shenanigans here. But I do think that there is room for it to grow, and there are people who will enjoy this format quite a bit. So I encourage you, if you like what you saw here at all, to test out the format a bit for yourself. Now, this is a question that I've seen people ask a couple times, and I generally don't like to, put formats against each other. But people have asked, like, do you think that Cyber format is better or worse than GOAT format? And I have my own answer for this, but what are y'all's answers to this question?
In my opinion, it's probably worse because worse than the GOAT format because it's a lot sackier and basically the games can last in these finals a couple of minutes and it's over.
Yeah,
So
I agree with that. I mean, I do really like the Cybernetic Revolution cards because
yeah, me too.
I remember from my childhood or youth, that's when I really started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Sort of competitive and bought lots of boosters. Still bought some boosters, but that's when I really played my first major tournaments, was around the Cybernetic Revolution, Cyber Dragon time. But yeah, the format itself, just because of Cyberstein, it feels like a mirror match of Machine Reasoning Gate from GOAT format, like as if everyone would be playing that. I also think that GOAT format is the cleaner format somehow.
Yeah, no, I definitely would agree. Like for me personally, I like GOAT format a lot more than Cyber format. But as you two alluded to, there's a lot of nostalgia for the Cybernetic Revolution cards. It's really fun to play with them occasionally. And I think if people want to experience something that uses the same list as GOAT format, so it's similar in that way, but is very different in terms of like the sackiness of decks and things like that, then it's fun to dip your toes into Cyber format occasionally for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's pretty much how I felt before signing up for the tournament too.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank both of you for joining me here on the stream today. I really enjoyed talking to you and getting your insights on the format and the decks that you played. And yeah, congratulations to both of you again for doing so well, because these games were really exciting to see. And, there was a lot of strict competition in this tournament. So kudos to both of you for doing so well and making this far.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for hosting, as always.
Yeah. And,
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you all for playing. If any of you out there want to play in future events like this, definitely head on over to the YGOFrom0 Discord server, linked in the description down below. We hold monthly tournaments there like this one, as well as weekly locals. So definitely stop on by and play if this sort of piqued your interest. But I hope that you enjoyed the stream. As always, definitely a bit of a shorter one than usual, but that's the nature of the format. So it was still fun to watch, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. But that's going to do it for me. So I've been Ben from YGOFrom0, and I'm signing off.
Bye.